A heart beats inside an animal so big it could fit a school bus inside its mouth. This is the blue whale, the largest animal ever known to live on Earth. Bigger than any dinosaur, bigger than any shark. You would think something this size makes an easy target, but the opposite is true. In the deep ocean, killer whales hunt in packs. Great white sharks patrol the coastlines. Yet almost nothing on this planet dares to challenge a full-grown blue whale. Today we dive into the reasons why. A heart as heavy as a small car, a tail strike that can break a boat in half, a body so massive it breaks every rule of ocean hunting. If you find this as wild as we do, hit like and subscribe before we continue. Prepare yourself. We begin. Picture a heart so big a child could swim through one of its valves. That is the heart of a blue whale. It weighs about 400 pounds, roughly the same as a full-grown grizzly bear. Every beat pushes gallons of blood through a body longer than 3 school buses parked end to end. Scientists tracking wild blue whales recorded something strange. When the whale dives deep to feed, its heart rate drops to just 2 beats per minute. Then, as it swims back toward the surface, the heart speeds up fast, sometimes hitting 37 beats per minute. That jump happens in seconds. No gym workout, no sprint. Nothing built by humans puts that kind of stress on a heart and survives it. A blue whale does this every single day of its life. Doctors who study human hearts say an organ under that kind of pressure change would tear itself apart in most animals. The blue whale's heart holds together because of walls thick as a phone book, built to handle forces that would stop a human heart cold. Think about standing next to something with a heartbeat you could feel through the ground. Divers who have gotten close enough describe it. A deep, slow thud, like a drum played from inside a submarine. That thud is not just noise, it is raw power moving thousands of pounds of blood through a body the length of a basketball court. Now, picture what happens when that same whale needs to fight, flee, or defend a calf. A heart this strong does not tire out the way a smaller predator's heart would. An orca chasing prey burns through its heart's limits fast. A blue whale does not. It can keep moving, keep swimming, keep surviving, long after most attackers would give up from exhaustion. This is not about being aggressive. It is about outlasting anything that tries to test it. Scientists studying whale strandings found something else. Even old injured blue whales showed hearts strong enough to keep them alive far longer than expected. It is as if evolution built a machine designed for one purpose: never quit. And here is the part that catches people off guard. This massive heart runs on krill, tiny shrimp-like creatures barely bigger than a paperclip. Billions of them, swallowed daily, power an organ heavier than most home refrigerators. That means a blue whale's strength does not come from meat, muscle, or violence. It comes from quietly eating almost non-stop, turning the smallest food on Earth into the biggest engine in the ocean. Next time you picture a predator, do not imagine sharp teeth or a fast chase. Imagine a heart the size of a golf cart thudding steady and unstoppable, powering a body built to survive anything the ocean throws at it. But a heart this powerful needs fuel. And what a blue whale eats each day is stranger and bigger than almost anyone expects. Open a blue whale's mouth and you are looking at something heavier than most animals on land. The tongue alone can weigh as much as an adult elephant, close to 6,000 pounds. That is not a typo. A single body part on this whale outweighs an entire species people consider massive. Marine biologists studying feeding blue whales caught something incredible on camera. When the whale lunges toward a swarm of krill, its jaw drops open at almost a 90-degree angle. The mouth expands so wide the whale's body briefly looks broken, stretched, distorted beyond recognition. It is not injured, it is feeding. Folds of skin under the jaw, called throat pleats, stretch out like an accordion, letting the mouth balloon to hold an amount of water and food larger than the whale's own body. Imagine a school bus trying to swallow another school bus. That is close to what is happening here. Once the mouth is full, the whale does something just as wild. It pushes all that water back out through comb-like plates called baleen, straining out thousands of krill in a single motion. The whole event, from open mouth to swallowed meal, takes less than 60 seconds. No predator on Earth eats like this. Lions stalk, sharks bite, blue whales engulf. Researchers estimate a single lunge can capture close to 500,000 calories worth of krill. To match that, a human would need to eat more than 400 fast food meals in one bite. This feeding style comes with a hidden risk. During the lunge, the whale is nearly blind to danger, its whole body focused on capturing food, not watching for threats. Yet in millions of years of evolution, almost nothing has learned to use that moment against it. Why not attack a distracted giant? The size gap is part of the answer. Even mid-lunge, a blue whale's body is still too massive, too fast, too powerful for most ocean hunters to risk it. Scientists tracking orca behavior near feeding blue whales notice something telling. The orcas circle, they watch, they rarely commit to an attack. The tongue itself plays a role here too. It is not just heavy, it is packed with nerve endings that let the whale sense water pressure and prey location with incredible precision. That means even while feeding, the whale has a built-in warning system most people never think about. A heart the size of a golf cart. A tongue heavier than an elephant. Already this animal breaks the normal rules of biology. But the sound this creature makes to communicate goes even further, travelling distances that seem impossible for anything living in water. Deep in the ocean, a blue whale calls out, and that single sound can travel for hundreds of miles. Scientists using underwater microphones recorded blue whale calls reaching volumes close to 180 decibels. A jet engine at takeoff hits around 140 decibels. That means a blue whale's voice can be louder than the loudest machine humans have ever built. The sound does not just travel far, it moves in a way that seems to bend the rules of physics as most people understand them. Water carries sound faster and farther than air. A whale call starting near Hawaii has been picked up by listening stations near Alaska, a distance longer than the entire length of California stacked on itself several times. Researchers first found this by accident. Cold War-era listening equipment, built to detect submarines, picked up strange low-frequency rumbles crossing entire ocean basins. For years, no one knew what was causing them. Eventually, scientists confirmed it. Blue whales were talking to each other across distances larger than some countries. Picture standing in New York and having someone in Denver hear you speak in a normal voice. That is close to the scale of what a blue whale can do underwater. These calls are not random noise. Some patterns repeat in ways that suggest communication, maybe about food, migration paths, or possible danger nearby. Other calls seem to announce presence, almost like a whale saying, "I am here and I am massive." Here is where things get even stranger. The frequency of many blue whale calls sits below what human ears can hear. People do not just fail to notice this sound, they physically cannot detect most of it without special equipment. That means somewhere in the ocean right now, whales could be communicating in ways happening completely outside human awareness. For a predator sizing up a blue whale, this sound might carry a message too. A call this powerful is not subtle. It broadcasts strength, size, and presence across the water in a way no other animal's voice comes close to matching. Some researchers believe this sound may also help blue whales sense their surroundings, almost like a slow-motion sonar system, bouncing off distant obstacles, revealing the shape of the ocean floor or nearby movement. Combined with a body the length of a basketball court and a heart the size of a small car, this sound completes a picture of an animal built on a scale that breaks nearly every normal comparison. A heartbeat that could shake a diver, a mouth that swallows 500,000 calories in one gulp, a voice louder than a jet. But even with all this power, one group of hunters has tested the blue whale before, and what happened next reveals exactly why so few ever try again. Killer whales earned their name for a reason. They hunt in coordinated packs, take down great white sharks, and have been recorded attacking prey many times their own size. Yet when it comes to a full-grown blue whale, even orcas hesitate. Marine biologists tracking orca pods near blue whale migration routes documented something telling. The orcas approach, they circle. Sometimes they test the edges of a pod, searching for a weak point. Full-grown blue whales rarely become the target. Scientists studying these encounters found the reason comes down to simple math. A healthy adult blue whale can weigh close to 200 tons. That is roughly the weight of 30 adult elephants combined. Even a pack of a dozen orcas, each weighing around 6 tons, cannot easily overpower an animal outweighing their entire group several times over. Attempting it risks serious injury or death for the attackers, not just the target. Researchers reviewing scars on blue whale skin found bite marks and rake patterns from orca teeth. These marks tell a story of attempted attacks that did not finish the way the orcas hoped. In most documented cases, the blue whale simply outlasted the attempt, swimming, diving, or using sheer size to make the fight not worth continuing. Compare this to how orcas hunt smaller whales like grey whale calves. Those hunts can last for hours, with multiple orcas taking turns exhausting the prey. Attempting the same strategy against a healthy adult blue whale would cost far more energy than the orcas could realistically gain from success, even if they somehow managed it. This is not about fear the way people often imagine it. It is about risk versus reward, a calculation every wild predator makes before committing to a hunt. A blue whale represents a reward that might not be worth the danger involved in getting it. Here is something that adds another layer to this standoff. Blue whale calves, still growing and without the same size advantage, do face real risk from orca attacks. This means it is not the species itself keeping orcas away. It is raw size, plain and simple. Remove that size and the entire balance of power flips instantly. Scientists tracking calf mortality rates found this exact pattern repeating across multiple populations. Attacks cluster around younger, smaller whales, while adults swim largely unchallenged. This detail changes how researchers think about ocean hunting itself. It is not always about sharp teeth or aggression. Sometimes survival comes down to simply outgrowing every threat that could possibly hurt you. But growing that large from birth requires something almost as extreme as the whale's final size. And what a blue whale calf drinks in its first year of life pushes biology into territory that sounds almost impossible. A newborn blue whale enters the ocean already bigger than most adult animals on Earth, stretching close to 25 feet long and weighing around 3 tons. That is only the beginning. To reach full size, this calf needs fuel on a scale that sounds almost unbelievable. Scientists studying blue whale nursing found that a calf drinks between 50 and 200 gallons of milk every single day. That's enough to fill an entire bathtub, sometimes several times over, day after day for months. This milk is not like the milk found in a grocery store. Blue whale milk contains close to 50% fat, compared to around 4% fat in cow's milk. Researchers compare its texture to something closer to toothpaste than liquid, thick enough that it barely mixes with seawater as the calf feeds. That thickness matters. It means almost none of the milk's energy gets wasted, letting the calf convert food into growth at a pace nothing else in the animal kingdom can match. The result is staggering. A blue whale calf can gain around 200 pounds every single day during its first year of life. To put that in perspective, that is like a newborn baby gaining the weight of an adult human, every day, for months without stopping. By the time it reaches 6 months old, a calf may have already doubled or tripled its birth length. Mothers pay a steep price for this. Producing that much rich milk requires massive stored energy, mostly built up from feeding seasons in food, rich waters before giving birth. Some mothers barely eat during nursing months, running almost entirely on fat reserves while their body pours everything into feeding their calf. This trade-off explains why calves face more risk from predators than adults. During this critical growth period, a calf is still small enough that pack hunters like orcas see an opportunity. Every single day of rapid growth pushes the calf closer to a size where that risk disappears completely. Researchers tracking calf development found this growth window becomes a race against time. Grow fast enough, and predators lose their advantage. Grow too slowly, and the risk window stays open longer than it should. This explains why blue whale mothers stay close to their calves constantly during the first year, ready to physically block or shield them if danger gets close. It also explains something else researchers have observed. Calves seem to instinctively stay near their mother's body, using her massive size as a moving wall of protection, while their own body races to catch up. This rapid growth phase eventually produces something almost impossible to challenge, an adult so large that nearly every predator in the ocean simply gives up before trying. But one very specific type of scar tells scientists exactly how many of those early attempts actually happened. Scientists studying blue whale skin have found something that works almost like a diary written in scar tissue. Rake marks caused by orca teeth dragging across skin during an attempted attack show up on a percentage of blue whales examined around the world. These marks tell a story most people never get to see, a record of hunts that started but did not finish successfully. Researchers analysing photographs from multiple populations found something surprising. In some regions, close to 40% of blue whales carry these rake scars somewhere on their bodies. That means attacks happen far more often than most people assume. What differs is the outcome. These are survivors, whales that lived through an attempted attack and carry the proof on their skin permanently. Marine biologists comparing scar patterns to calf and adult populations found something telling. Younger, smaller whales show fresher, more severe scarring. Adult whales often carry older marks, healed and faded, suggesting the attacks happened earlier in life, before the whale reached full size. This lines up with everything researchers already understand about the size advantage adult blue whales hold. The scars essentially map out exactly when in a whale's life it becomes too large and too strong for predators to seriously threaten. Here is where the story gets more complex. Some scientists studying skin thickness found that blue whale skin can measure over an inch thick in certain areas, acting almost like natural armour. This thickness likely explains why so many attacks fail to cause fatal injury, even when orcas manage to make contact. A bite that could kill a smaller whale species often results in nothing more than a surface wound on a full-grown blue whale. Researchers studying specific attack attempts documented pods of orcas working together, some biting at the tail, others attempting to cover the blowhole to prevent breathing. Even with this level of coordinated effort, most documented attempts on healthy adults still ended without a kill. The blue whale simply absorbed the attempt and kept moving. This detail changes how scientists think about survival in the ocean. It is not always about avoiding conflict completely. Sometimes survival comes from a body built to withstand conflict and continue on largely unaffected. Compare this to smaller marine mammals, where a single serious bite can often prove fatal. For a blue whale, that same bite might barely break the surface of skin thick enough to rival some ship hulls. Scientists studying these scar patterns describe them as living proof of exactly how the balance of power in the ocean shifts as a blue whale grows. Every faded scar represents an attack that failed, a predator that tried and walked away with nothing. But even understanding size and skin thickness does not fully explain how much force these animals can generate, and one bite-sized amount of water reveals just how extreme that force really is. When a blue whale opens its mouth to feed, it does not sip water the way most animals drink. It engulfs an amount large enough to fill an entire backyard swimming pool in a single gulp. Researchers using tracking tags placed directly on feeding whales measured this event in real time, and the numbers stunned even scientists who study these animals for a living. A single lunge can pull in around 18,000 gallons of water and krill combined. That is roughly the same volume found in a standard-sized swimming pool built for a family home. All of that water gets taken in under 10 seconds, then pushed back out through the baleen plates lining the whale's mouth, leaving behind a meal of trapped krill. This process places incredible stress on the whale's entire body. Scientists studying the mechanics of this lunge found that the force involved can briefly slow the whale down by more than 60%, almost like slamming on a car's brakes mid-swim. That sudden drop in speed burns a massive amount of energy, meaning each lunge costs the whale significant effort just to complete. This explains why blue whales target dense krill swarms specifically, areas where thousands of krill cluster together in a small space. Feeding on scattered prey would cost more energy than the whale gains back from eating it. Researchers tracking feeding patterns found that a single blue whale might perform over 100 lunges in a single day during peak feeding season, each one requiring this same burst of controlled, massive effort. Over an entire feeding season, a blue whale can consume close to 8,000 pounds of krill every single day. That adds up to millions of individual krill, each one barely the size of a paperclip, combining to fuel the largest animal that has ever lived. Here is something researchers find fascinating. Despite consuming this much food daily, blue whales spend a large part of the year barely eating at all, relying on stored fat reserves during migration and breeding months. This means the feeding season becomes an intense, high-stakes window where the whale must consume enough to survive the rest of the year. Scientists studying this feeding behavior describe it as one of the most extreme examples of biomechanical engineering found anywhere in the animal kingdom. A body large enough to generate that much force flexible enough to expand that dramatically, and precise enough to filter out food from thousands of gallons of water without wasting energy. No predator swimming nearby wants to be caught anywhere near this event. The sheer force and unpredictability of a feeding lunge make it far too risky to interfere with. But even away from feeding, other ocean hunters have learned there is one more reason to stay far away from a blue whale, and it has nothing to do with size at all. Great white sharks rank among the ocean's most feared hunters, capable of taking down seals, sea lions, and even smaller whale species. Yet when researchers study shark behaviour around blue whales, a clear pattern emerges. Sharks keep their distance from healthy adults, focusing their attention elsewhere. Scientists tracking shark activity near whale carcasses found something important. Sharks readily feed on dead or dying blue whales, sometimes gathering in large numbers around a single carcass. This tells researchers something critical. Sharks are not avoiding blue whales because of taste or size alone. They are avoiding the risk that comes with attacking something alive, strong, and capable of fighting back. A living blue whale can generate a tail strike powerful enough to seriously injure or kill a shark attempting to get close. Researchers studying whale tail mechanics found that a single strike can generate forces exceeding what most shark species could survive if hit directly. This turns what might look like an easy target into a serious gamble for any shark considering an attack. Compare this to how sharks typically hunt. Most shark attacks rely on surprise, a quick strike followed by retreat before prey can fight back effectively. A blue whale removes that advantage almost completely. Its massive size means there is no true element of surprise possible, and its powerful tail means retreating after a strike does not guarantee safety. Marine biologists studying sharks' stomach contents across multiple populations found blue whale remains almost exclusively linked to scavenging events, never confirmed predation on a healthy adult. This lines up with everything researchers understand about risk versus reward in ocean hunting. A shark expending massive energy and risking serious injury for a meal it can get more safely elsewhere simply is not a good survival strategy. Here is where things become interesting for calves. Some researchers believe young, still growing blue whales could theoretically face more risk from opportunistic shark attacks, though confirmed cases remain extremely rare even among calves. This suggests that maternal protection, calves staying close to their mother's body at nearly all times, plays a significant role in keeping this risk as low as it currently is. Sharks patrolling coastal waters and blue whales migrating through open ocean also rarely cross paths in situations where a shark could realistically attempt an ambush. Blue whales tend to favour deep open water, areas where a shark's typical hunting style becomes far less effective. This natural separation adds another layer of protection, one based purely on where each animal spends most of its time. Between overwhelming size, a tail capable of serious damage, and a general lack of overlap in hunting grounds, sharks have little reason to test their luck against a full-grown blue whale. But this raises a bigger question about how a body this massive manages to support itself, and the answer lies in bones built unlike almost anything else in the animal kingdom. Supporting a body close to 200 tons requires a skeleton unlike anything found in most animals. Scientists studying blue whale anatomy describe the skeletal structure as functioning almost like the framework of a suspension bridge, built specifically to distribute massive weight without collapsing under its own force. On land, this kind of size would be physically impossible. Elephants, the largest land animals alive today, max out around 6 tons, a fraction of what a blue whale carries. Researchers explain that water solves a problem land animals could never overcome. Buoyancy supports much of the whale's weight, reducing the direct pressure bones would otherwise need to handle. Still, the skeleton itself has to manage forces most animals never experience. The spine alone can stretch longer than a city bus, made up of vertebrae that increase in size toward the tail to handle the force generated during swimming and diving. Scientists studying whalebone density found something unexpected. Despite the whale's massive size, its bones are actually less dense than many smaller animals' bones, filled with oil-rich spongy tissue. This design keeps the skeleton lighter than it would otherwise be, helping the whale stay buoyant while still providing enough structural support to hold everything together. Researchers comparing this to engineering found strong similarities to how modern bridges use hollow or reinforced beams instead of solid concrete blocks, saving weight without sacrificing strength. The rib cage plays an equally important role, built flexible enough to handle the massive pressure changes that come with diving to extreme depths. Rigid ribs, like those found in many land animals, would risk fracturing under that kind of pressure. Blue whale ribs instead have some ability to flex, absorbing pressure changes without breaking. Scientists studying stranded blue whales found something that highlights just how much this skeleton depends on water support. On land, without the ocean's buoyancy, a blue whale's own organs and skeletal structure can begin to fail within hours, unable to handle their own weight without water to help distribute it. This detail reveals an important trade-off. The same size that makes a blue whale nearly untouchable in water becomes a serious vulnerability the moment that support disappears. This explains why stranding events are almost always fatal for this species, regardless of any rescue attempts made in time. Researchers studying skeletal growth also found that a blue whale's bones continue developing well into adulthood, slowly thickening and strengthening over years, matching the animal's continued growth long after birth. This slow, steady structural development mirrors everything else about the species, built gradually into a machine capable of handling forces that would break almost any other skeleton on Earth. But bones and buoyancy only explain how the whale holds itself together. What happens when that entire structure needs to move at full power reveals an entirely different kind of strength. Every predator in the ocean follows an unspoken rule. Bigger prey means bigger risk. Most hunting strategies rely on overpowering something smaller, weaker, or slower. A blue whale breaks this rule so completely that scientists studying ocean predator behavior describe it as existing almost outside the normal food chain entirely. Researchers explain that predator-prey relationships usually depend on a rough size ratio. A lion can take down prey several times its own weight, but rarely attempts prey 10 or 20 times larger. Killer whales follow similar limits, capable of impressive feats against large prey, but still working within realistic size boundaries most of the time. A full-grown blue whale shatters that ratio entirely, outweighing even a large orcapod combined by a significant margin. This creates a situation scientists call a size refuge, meaning the animal has effectively grown beyond the reach of nearly every natural predator through size alone. Very few species in the entire animal kingdom achieve this. Most animals face some level of predation risk throughout their entire lives, no matter how large or strong they become. Blue whales represent one of the rare exceptions, an animal that essentially outgrows danger completely by adulthood. Researchers studying this phenomenon across different ecosystems find it fascinating precisely because it is so rare. Even massive land predators like tigers or lions still face occasional risk from rival predators or coordinated attacks. Blue whales, once fully grown, face almost none of that same pressure. This detail changes how scientists think about evolution itself. Growing this large clearly came with serious trade-offs: slower reproduction, longer time to maturity, and massive energy requirements just to survive daily. Yet evolution favoured this path anyway, suggesting the safety gained from reaching this size outweighed every disadvantage that came with getting there. Compare this to smaller whale species, many of which still face regular predation risk from orcas throughout their entire lives, regardless of age. Being large clearly is not the only factor at play across whale species generally, but for blue whales specifically, the size gap became large enough to fundamentally change the entire equation. Scientists tracking population data across different whale species found predation risk drops sharply once a species crosses a certain size threshold, and blue whales sit so far beyond that threshold that documented predation on healthy adults remains exceptionally rare worldwide. This raises an important question researchers continue studying. If size alone provides this much protection, what actually killed off large numbers of blue whales throughout history? The unsettling answer involves a predator far more dangerous than any shark or orca, one blue whales had never encountered anywhere in their evolutionary history until relatively recently. Beneath the ocean's surface, tiny krill gather by the billions, forming swarms so dense they can appear as a red or orange haze stretching for miles. To a blue whale, this swarm represents everything needed to survive an entire year, concentrated into a target it can consume shockingly fast. Scientists tracking feeding blue whales found that a single lunge through a dense krill swarm can capture as many as 500,000 individual krill in one motion. The swarm itself can vanish from that specific spot almost instantly, consumed faster than it could ever escape or regroup. Researchers studying krill behaviour explain why this works so effectively. Krill swarms form as a defence strategy against smaller predators, using sheer numbers to confuse and overwhelm fish or squid that might normally pick off individuals one at a time. This strategy works well against smaller threats. Against a blue whale, it becomes the opposite of protection, creating the exact dense, concentrated target the whale is built to exploit. Scientists studying this relationship describe it as a mismatch built over millions of years of evolution. Krill evolved swarming behaviour long before blue whales developed their massive specialised feeding technique. Once blue whales evolved lunge feeding, krill swarms unintentionally became the perfect food source, offering maximum calories for minimum searching effort. Researchers tracking whale movement patterns found that blue whales can detect these swarms from surprisingly far distances, likely using a combination of sound, water pressure changes, and possibly even smell to locate dense krill concentrations before diving toward them. Once located, the whale often performs multiple lunges through the same swarm, repeatedly diving back into what remains until the food source becomes too scattered to be worth pursuing further. This hunting style creates an interesting ripple effect throughout the ecosystem. Scientists studying krill populations found that blue whale feeding can temporarily clear out enormous sections of a swarm, forcing surviving krill to scatter and regroup elsewhere, which in turn affects smaller predators that also rely on those same swarms for food. Researchers studying this dynamic describe blue whales as playing an outsized role in shaping krill population patterns across entire regions, despite the whale's diet consisting of what most people would consider an insignificant tiny creature. This detail highlights something important about how nature scales. The largest animal ever to exist survives almost entirely on one of the smallest creatures in the ocean, a relationship most people would never expect looking at the size difference alone. It also explains why blue whale populations depend so heavily on healthy krill populations remaining stable. Any serious disruption to krill numbers directly threatens the food source an entire species depends on for survival. Understanding this connection reveals just how fragile even the ocean's most dominant animal can become when its food source faces pressure, a vulnerability that becomes especially clear when examining how blue whale skin interacts with the water around it during high-speed swimming. Watch a blue whale swim at speed, and its skin does something unexpected. It ripples, moving in waves along the body as the whale cuts through the water. Scientists studying this movement found that it is not random. It plays a direct role in how efficiently the whale swims through open ocean. Researchers explain that blue whale skin sits over a thick layer of blubber, and this combination creates a slightly flexible surface, different from the more rigid skin found on many other marine animals. As water flows over the body during swimming, this flexibility allows the skin to shift and ripple in a way that appears to reduce drag, similar in concept to how flexible materials used in competitive swimsuits and boat hull coatings help reduce resistance in water. This detail matters more than it might first appear. Moving a body this massive through water requires enormous amounts of energy. Any small improvement in efficiency saves significant energy over the course of a single swim, and even more across an entire migration route stretching thousands of miles. Scientists studying whale hydrodynamics found that blue whales can reach burst speeds of over 20 miles per hour when necessary, despite their enormous size, a speed that seems almost impossible without some form of drag-reducing advantage built into the body itself. Compare this to a cargo ship of similar length, which requires massive engines and enormous amounts of fuel just to reach a fraction of that speed. A blue whale achieves this using nothing but muscle, fat, and a uniquely flexible outer surface built through millions of years of evolution. Researchers studying skin texture up close found small ridges and patterns across different sections of the whale's body, possibly helping direct water flow in ways that further reduce resistance during high-speed swimming. This level of natural engineering continues to interest scientists working in unrelated fields, including those designing more efficient ships, submarines, and underwater equipment. Some engineering teams have specifically studied whale skin patterns while developing new materials meant to reduce drag in manufactured vehicles. Here is something that adds an extra layer to this story. This rippling effect becomes especially important during the whale's fastest movements, moments when quick bursts of speed could mean the difference between avoiding a dangerous situation and getting caught in one. While full-grown blue whales rarely need to outswim a determined predator, this ability still plays a role in general survival, particularly for younger, more vulnerable whales still developing their full-size advantage. Scientists continue studying exactly how much of the whale's swimming efficiency comes from this skin-rippling effect compared to body shape, tail movement, and other physical factors, but early research suggests it plays a meaningful role in an already highly optimized swimming design. This natural efficiency becomes even more important when considering how deep and how long a blue whale can dive, a feat that pushes biology into territory that outperforms even advanced human engineering. Blue whales regularly dive to depths exceeding 500 feet, staying submerged for stretches that can last beyond 30 minutes at a time. Scientists studying naval training exercises found something remarkable when comparing this ability to human technology. Some standard submarine drills involve depth and duration windows that a blue whale can match or exceed using nothing but its own biology. Researchers explain that achieving this requires an extraordinary set of physical adaptations. A blue whale's blood contains significantly higher concentrations of oxygen, storing proteins compared to land mammals, allowing its body to hold and use oxygen far more efficiently during extended dives. Its muscles also store additional oxygen directly, functioning almost like built-in reserve tanks that activate once the lungs' oxygen supply starts running low. Scientists studying dive physiology found that a blue whale's heart rate drops dramatically during deep dives, sometimes down to just a few beats per minute, dramatically reducing the amount of oxygen the body needs to function during that time. Blood flow also shifts, prioritizing the brain and heart while temporarily reducing circulation to less critical areas of the body. This process, known as a dive response, exists in many marine mammals, but blue whales push it to an extreme few other species can match. Researchers studying this process compare it to a controlled, temporary shutdown of non-essential systems, similar in concept to how a phone might switch to low power mode to extend battery life during an emergency. This detailed internal management allows the whale to function normally for extended periods, despite operating in an environment with essentially zero oxygen available from the surrounding water. Once the dive ends and the whale returns to the surface, its body needs to recover quickly, rapidly restocking oxygen levels before diving again. Scientists tracking surface behavior found that blue whales typically take several breaths in quick succession after a deep dive, sometimes visible from a distance as a series of powerful blows breaking the surface one after another. This deep diving ability directly connects to feeding success. Krill swarms often gather at significant depths during daylight hours, meaning a whale unable to dive this deep and stay down this long would struggle to access enough food to survive. Researchers studying feeding efficiency found a direct link between dive capability and overall body condition, with whales capable of longer, deeper dives generally showing better health and stronger reproductive success over time. This extreme diving ability also provides an unexpected form of protection. Predators capable of surface attacks lose most of their advantage the moment a blue whale disappears into deep water for an extended period, another layer added to a body already difficult to threaten in nearly every possible way. Yet even with all this protection built into adulthood, one narrow window in a young whale's life remains dangerously exposed, and understanding exactly why reveals one of the clearest patterns researchers have found in blue whale survival data. Every piece of evidence researchers have gathered points toward the same conclusion. Full-grown blue whales face almost no real predation risk, but calves tell a completely different story. Scientists studying attack patterns across multiple populations found that nearly all confirmed or strongly suspected predation events involve young, still-growing whales, not adults. Researchers explain why this gap exists so clearly. A newborn calf, even at its already massive birth size, still falls within a range orcas can realistically challenge, especially when hunting in coordinated groups. As that calf grows, this window of vulnerability shrinks month by month, eventually closing entirely once the whale reaches a size no predator group can safely engage. Scientists studying calf mortality rates found this risk peaks during the first few months of life, then drops steadily as growth accelerates. This timeline lines up directly with the incredible growth rate discussed earlier, close to 200 pounds gained daily during the first year. Every single day of that rapid growth pushes the calf further away from danger. Researchers tracking mother-calf pairs found behaviour that appears specifically designed to manage this risk window. Mothers stay in extremely close physical contact with calves during the highest risk months, often swimming with the calf positioned directly against her body, using her own massive size as a physical barrier against potential threats. This detail explains something scientists find particularly compelling. The mother's size does not just provide protection through presence alone. Her body actively blocks access, making it physically difficult for a predator to reach the calf without going through her first. Scientists documenting orca encounters near mother-calf pairs found that successful attacks almost always require separating the calf from its mother first, something orca pods actively attempt through coordinated harassment tactics. When separation fails, attacks overwhelmingly fail as well. Researchers studying this pattern describe maternal positioning as one of the most important survival factors during a calf's early life, arguably more important than any single physical trait the calf itself possesses at that stage. This creates a clear, high-stakes window. Survive the first year, reach a large enough size, and predation risk drops dramatically for the rest of the whale's life, which can stretch beyond 80 years in some documented cases. Scientists studying population data found that whales surviving past this early risk window show significantly higher long-term survival rates, reinforcing just how critical those first several months truly are. This pattern also explains why so much maternal energy investment happens early. A mother pours enormous resources into rapid calf growth specifically because getting through this dangerous window quickly matters more than almost anything else for long-term survival. Understanding this reveals an uncomfortable truth about even the ocean's largest animal. Despite everything discussed so far, vulnerability still exists somewhere in this story, just not where most people would expect to find it. Orcas hunting blue whales do not rely on brute force alone. Scientists studying documented attack attempts found coordinated strategies that reveal genuine intelligence and planning, even when those strategies still fail against a healthy adult. Researchers describe specific tactics used during these attempts. Some orcas focus on separating a calf from its mother, using repeated passes and physical positioning to create distance between the two. Others target the tail, attempting to reduce the whale's ability to swim effectively and escape. In some documented cases, orcas have even attempted to cover a blue whale's blowhole, trying to interfere with its ability to breathe during a prolonged encounter. This level of coordination shows orcas understand exactly what makes a blue whale dangerous to approach directly, and adjust their strategy accordingly rather than attempting a simple direct assault. Scientists studying these encounters found that attacks typically involve multiple orcas working in rotation, taking turns making passes at the target while others hang back, conserving energy for their next attempt. This pattern mirrors hunting strategies orcas use successfully against other large prey, including adult grey whales in certain documented cases. Yet against full-grown blue whales specifically, even this sophisticated approach usually falls short. Researchers analysing outcomes found that the sheer size difference creates problems no amount of coordination fully solves, even if orcas successfully separate a calf temporarily or land a strike against the tail. The raw power and size of an adult blue whale often allows it to continue moving, continue swimming, and eventually put enough distance between itself and the attacking pod to end the encounter. Scientists studying energy expenditure during these attempts found that failed attacks cost orcas significant amounts of energy without any food reward at the end, an outcome that likely discourages repeated attempts against the same target once initial resistance becomes clear. This detail matters for understanding predator behaviour broadly. Wild animals generally do not continue investing energy into strategies that consistently fail to produce results. Researchers believe this explains why documented attacks specifically targeting full-grown blue whales remain relatively rare compared to attacks on calves or other whale species, despite orcas clearly possessing the intelligence and coordination needed to attempt it. Compare this to successful orca hunts against smaller prey, which often conclude far more quickly with a much higher success rate. The math simply does not favour repeatedly targeting an animal capable of absorbing this level of coordinated effort and continuing on largely unaffected. Scientists studying this dynamic across multiple ocean regions found remarkably consistent patterns, reinforcing that this is not isolated behaviour but a broader trend across different orca populations worldwide. Even the ocean's most intelligent, coordinated hunters recognise when a target represents more risk than reward. But intelligence works both ways in this story, and one specific body part gives blue whales a defensive advantage most people never consider. A blue whale's tail, called a fluke, can measure over 25 feet across, roughly the width of a professional basketball court's key area doubled. This is not just a tool for swimming, it represents one of the most powerful defensive weapons found anywhere in the animal kingdom. Scientists studying whale tail mechanics found that a single strike can generate forces reaching several tons of pressure, more than enough to seriously damage or destroy a small boat caught in the wrong position. Documented cases exist of smaller vessels suffering serious structural damage after accidental contact with a whale's tail, even when the whale itself showed no aggressive intent. Researchers explain why this force matters so much in a defensive context. Unlike teeth or claws, which require direct contact with a specific target, a tail strike can affect anything within its wide arc, creating a broad area of danger around the whale during any sudden, powerful movement. For a predator attempting to approach from behind or below, positions often used during coordinated hunting attempts, this creates a serious risk that has nothing to do with the whale's massive body size directly. Scientists studying orca injuries linked to failed blue whale encounters found evidence suggesting some injuries likely resulted from tail contact, rather than direct physical struggle elsewhere on the body. This detail adds another layer to why coordinated attacks so often fail. It is not just about overcoming size. Attacking predators must also account for a weapon capable of causing serious harm from a distance most other prey animals could never generate. Researchers studying tail strength found that the muscles powering this movement rank among the strongest found in any animal, built specifically to propel a body weighing close to 200 tons through water efficiently and repurposed effectively as a defensive tool when needed. Compare this to how other large animals defend themselves. Elephants use tusks, rhinos use horns. A blue whale relies on raw propulsion power, turning its primary swimming tool into a weapon capable of ending a threat without ever needing to bite or grab anything directly. This defensive capability becomes especially relevant during moments when a whale feels threatened or cornered, situations where sudden, powerful tail movements become far more likely. Scientists studying whale behaviour during stressful encounters found increased tail activity directly correlated with the presence of nearby threats, suggesting the whale actively uses this movement as both an escape mechanism and a defensive deterrent simultaneously. This dual-purpose design reflects millions of years of evolution solving multiple problems using a single, highly effective body structure. Understanding this tail's true power changes how researchers interpret many documented predator encounters, revealing that some failed attacks may have ended not because predators simply gave up, but because a single, well-timed strike made continuing the attempt far too dangerous to risk. Yet raw power alone does not explain everything about how a blue whale detects danger long before any physical confrontation even becomes possible. Spotting danger early matters more than fighting it directly, and researchers studying blue whale sensory ability found this species comes remarkably well equipped for early detection. While a blue whale's eyesight alone is not considered exceptional compared to some ocean predators, its combination of senses working together creates an early warning system covering an enormous range around its body. Scientists explain that underwater visibility naturally limits how far eyesight alone can detect movement, even for animals with strong vision. This means blue whales rely heavily on other senses to fill this gap, particularly hearing and the ability to detect vibrations moving through water. Researchers studying blue whale hearing found their auditory range extends into extremely low frequencies, allowing them to detect sounds and vibrations from sources located hundreds of feet away, potentially covering a distance comparable to 2 full football fields laid end-to-end in open water. This detection range gives blue whales significant advance warning before a potential threat gets anywhere close to striking distance. Scientists studying orca hunting behaviour found that these predators are not silent during coordinated attacks, producing distinct vocalizations and movement patterns that create detectable vibrations well before any physical contact occurs. A blue whale capable of sensing these signals early gains valuable time to respond, whether that means changing direction, diving deeper, or simply positioning a calf more protectively along its body. Researchers studying whale behavior during suspected threat encounters found changes in swimming patterns and dive behavior occurring before any visual confirmation of a nearby predator would even be possible, suggesting these early detection systems play an active, ongoing role in day-to-day survival. This detail highlights something important about how blue whales avoid danger in the first place. Much of their safety comes not from confrontation, but from avoiding situations where confrontation becomes necessary at all. Scientists studying sensory biology across large marine mammals found that this kind of early detection system becomes increasingly valuable as body size increases, since larger animals generally need more advanced warning time to change direction or respond effectively compared to smaller, more agile species. This creates an interesting balance. The same massive size that makes blue whales difficult to threaten directly also makes rapid, sudden reactions more challenging, making early detection an essential piece of the survival puzzle rather than an optional advantage. Researchers continue studying exactly how blue whales process and prioritize different sensory information during potential threat situations, but current evidence strongly suggests a combination of hearing, vibration detection, and environmental awareness working together far more effectively than eyesight alone ever could underwater. This sensory system, combined with everything already covered, from raw size to tail strength to skin built like natural armor, paints a picture of an animal protected on nearly every possible level. But one more advantage remains, an advantage that requires no teeth, no claws, and no aggression whatsoever to remain completely effective. Every dangerous predator most people picture comes equipped with sharp teeth, built for tearing, biting, or crushing. A blue whale has none of that. Instead of teeth, it relies on baleen, hundreds of flexible plates made from a material similar to human fingernails, hanging from the upper jaw like an enormous comb. Scientists studying blue whale evolution found this design represents a completely different survival strategy than nearly every other large predator in ocean history. Researchers explain that baleen plates work by filtering, not biting. As water rushes out of the whale's mouth after a lunge, these plates trap krill and other small prey inside while letting water escape freely. This system removes the need for hunting in the traditional sense entirely. There is no chase, no struggle, no direct confrontation with prey the way a shark or orca experiences during a hunt. Scientists studying feeding efficiency found this filtering method allows blue whales to consume massive quantities of food, using significantly less energy than active predatory hunting would require. This efficiency directly connects to the whale's enormous size. Growing this large demands enormous caloric intake, and a feeding system based on overwhelming volume rather than precision targeting turned out to be the only realistic way to fuel a body this massive consistently. Researchers studying baleen whale evolution more broadly found that this filtering strategy appears to have opened up an entirely different ecological role, one focused on abundant, tiny prey that most large predators completely ignore. Compare this approach to a lion stalking a single gazelle, using stealth, speed, and precision to secure one meal at a time. A blue whale instead targets swarms containing hundreds of thousands of individual prey items simultaneously, removing the risk and unpredictability that comes with hunting a single, potentially dangerous target. This detail also explains why blue whales pose essentially zero direct threat to other large animals, including humans. Without teeth built for tearing flesh, and without any evolutionary pressure to develop aggressive hunting behavior, blue whales simply never needed to become dangerous predators in the traditional sense. Scientists studying whale behavior around divers and boats found consistent patterns of curiosity or indifference, rarely anything resembling aggression, reinforcing that this species evolved without needing offensive weapons at all. Researchers studying the broader baleen whale family found this same pattern across multiple related species, suggesting filtering evolved as a highly successful strategy long before blue whales grew to their current record-breaking size. This raises an interesting point about survival in the ocean generally. Winning does not always require becoming the most aggressive or best-armed animal in the environment. Sometimes, survival comes from removing yourself from direct competition entirely, growing large enough and feeding efficiently enough that confrontation becomes almost entirely unnecessary. This strategy worked flawlessly for millions of years, protecting blue whales from every natural predator the ocean could produce. But nature was never the real threat that nearly ended this species, and the true danger came from somewhere blue whales had no evolutionary defense against whatsoever. Blue whales complete some of the longest migrations recorded among any mammal on Earth, with some populations travelling routes exceeding 3,000 miles between feeding and breeding grounds. That distance roughly matches travelling from New York City to Los Angeles, an enormous journey completed using nothing but muscle, fat reserves, and instinct passed down across generations. Scientists tracking migration patterns using satellite tags found these journeys are not random wandering. Blue whales follow remarkably consistent routes year after year, suggesting deep, possibly inherited knowledge of where food and safe breeding conditions can reliably be found. Researchers explain the reasoning behind this massive journey. Feeding grounds rich in krill tend to exist in colder waters, while breeding and calving happen in warmer regions better suited for newborn calves, still building up protective blubber layers. This means blue whales cannot simply stay in one location year-round. Survival requires this long, demanding journey, repeated annually for most of the whale's life. Scientists studying energy expenditure during migration found that whales rely almost entirely on stored fat reserves during this journey, since warmer breeding waters typically contain far less food compared to their feeding grounds. This creates an intense physical challenge, essentially requiring the whale to store enough energy in advance to fuel months of travel, breeding, and calving before returning to feeding grounds to replenish everything spent. Researchers tracking individual whales found some complete this entire round-trip journey in under a year, maintaining a steady pace across thousands of miles despite carrying a body weighing close to 200 tons. Comparing this to human transportation reveals just how demanding this journey really is. A commercial airplane covers similar distances in hours using powerful engines and refined fuel. A blue whale covers the same ground using only its own body, converting stored fat directly into the energy needed for sustained long-distance swimming. Scientists studying migration routes across different ocean basins found that some populations travel along fairly predictable coastal paths, while others cross vast stretches of open ocean, navigating using methods researchers still do not fully understand. Some theories suggest whales may use a combination of water temperature changes, ocean current patterns, and possibly even magnetic field sensitivity to maintain consistent routes across generations. This detail adds another layer to how impressive this journey truly is. Successfully navigating thousands of miles of open ocean, without landmarks, without maps, and often without direct contact with other whales along the way, represents a level of biological navigation science still works to fully explain. Researchers studying calf survival during migration found that young whales making this journey for the first time face additional risk, still building the stamina and fat reserves needed to complete such a demanding trip successfully. This adds yet another layer of difficulty to the already dangerous first year of life discussed earlier. Surviving predators represents only part of the challenge a young blue whale faces. Successfully completing this migration for the first time presents its own serious test, one that plays a direct role in determining which whales survive long enough to reach the size that finally makes them nearly untouchable. For millions of years, blue whales faced no serious threat capable of meaningfully reducing their population. Then, in the 20th century, everything changed almost overnight. Scientists studying whaling records found that commercial hunting nearly eliminated blue whales entirely within just a few decades, a level of population collapse no natural predator ever came close to causing throughout the species' entire evolutionary history. Researchers explain why this threat proved so different from anything blue whales had ever faced before. Every natural predator, including orcas, faced real risk and significant energy cost when attempting to challenge a blue whale, especially a healthy adult. Human whaling ships faced no such limitation. Explosive harpoons developed in the late 1800s removed the danger and difficulty that had always protected full-grown blue whales from serious predation. Scientists studying historical whaling data found that hunters specifically targeted blue whales because of their massive size, since a single animal could produce enormous amounts of oil and other valuable resources during this era. Ironically, the exact trait that had protected this species for millions of years, extreme size, became the reason it faced the greatest threat in its entire history. Researchers estimate that global blue whale populations dropped from several 100,000 individuals to under a few thousand by the time international protections finally began taking effect in the 1960s. This represents one of the fastest, most severe population collapses ever recorded for a large mammal species. Scientists studying this decline found the impact varied significantly by region, with some populations facing near total elimination, while others fared slightly better depending on how heavily local whaling operations targeted the species. This uneven impact continues affecting blue whale population recovery even today, with certain regional populations still struggling to rebuild, while others show more encouraging growth trends. Researchers tracking modern population numbers estimate that global blue whale numbers remain significantly below historical levels even decades after commercial whaling largely ended. Recovery has proven slow, partly due to the species' naturally slow reproduction rate, with females typically producing a single calf only once every 2 to 3 years. This detail highlights an uncomfortable reality. A species built to withstand nearly every natural threat the ocean could produce proved almost completely defenseless against a threat operating outside natural rules entirely, one using tools and technology no evolutionary adaptation could have possibly prepared for. Scientists studying conservation efforts found that international whaling bans, combined with ongoing research and protection efforts, have allowed some populations to show gradual signs of recovery in recent decades. Still, researchers caution that full recovery to historical population levels likely remains decades away, if it happens at all. This history reveals something important about strength and vulnerability existing simultaneously within the same animal. Every advantage discussed so far protected blue whales perfectly against natural threats for millions of years. Understanding what finally did threaten this species reveals exactly how differently danger can appear when it comes from somewhere entirely unexpected. Some blue whale calls travel with enough force that researchers believe nearby animals may physically feel the vibration before consciously registering it as sound. Scientists studying low-frequency whale calls found that these sounds move as powerful pressure waves through water, dense enough that sensitive receptors in other marine animals could detect the vibration itself, separate from simply hearing the noise. Researchers explain how this works using basic physics. Sound travels as a wave, and at the extremely low frequencies blue whales produce, that wave carries enough physical energy to create detectable pressure changes in the water around it, especially at closer range. This means nearby predators or prey might sense an approaching blue whale's call almost like a physical touch, moving through the water ahead of the sound reaching their hearing organs in a way their brain would recognize as distinct noise. Scientists studying orca sensory systems found these predators possess specialized organs capable of detecting exactly this kind of pressure change, suggesting they may sense a blue whale's presence and size indirectly through vibration alone, even before any visual contact occurs. This adds another layer to why orcas approach so cautiously. If a blue whale's call effectively broadcasts size and power through raw physical force, this becomes a passive deterrent that requires no aggression or intentional signaling on the whale's part. Researchers studying communication in large marine mammals found that this kind of powerful, wide-reaching vibration may serve multiple overlapping purposes simultaneously. It could function as long-distance communication between whales, a method of sensing surrounding geography using echo-like feedback, and potentially even an unintentional warning signal to nearby predators, all through the exact same physical mechanism. This multi-purpose design reflects a broader pattern found throughout blue whale biology, where single traits frequently serve several survival functions at once, rather than one narrow purpose. Scientists studying whale calls recorded during different situations found variation in frequency, pattern, and intensity depending on context, suggesting blue whales may have some level of control over exactly how they use this ability depending on the specific situation. Researchers continue working to fully decode what these variations actually mean, though clear patterns already suggest calls used during feeding differ noticeably from calls used during migration or potential threat situations. This ongoing research represents one of the more mysterious areas of blue whale biology still being explored today. Unlike physical traits such as size or skin thickness, sound-based communication and detection remain difficult to study directly, requiring specialized underwater equipment and years of patient observation to build any reliable understanding. What researchers do know reinforces everything already established about this species. A blue whale's presence announces itself powerfully, whether through raw physical size, a body built like natural armor, or a voice capable of moving through water as both sound and physical force simultaneously. This layered, overlapping system of natural defenses helps explain why so few threats in ocean history have ever posed serious danger to this species. But one final biological advantage remains, one connected directly to something as simple as body temperature. Surviving in cold ocean water requires serious biological adaptation, and blue whales carry a thick layer of blubber specifically built to trap heat and maintain a stable internal body temperature, regardless of surrounding water conditions. Scientists studying blue whale thermoregulation found that this blubber layer can measure several inches thick in certain areas, acting as both insulation and a critical energy reserve during long migrations or feeding gaps. Researchers explain why this matters beyond simple temperature control. This same blubber layer contributes directly to the whale's overall size and mass, adding significant weight and bulk that further reinforces every size-based advantage already discussed throughout this story. A thinner, less insulated animal of similar skeletal size would likely weigh considerably less, reducing some of the raw physical power blue whales rely on for defense and movement. Scientists studying cold water marine mammals found that maintaining stable body temperature in freezing ocean conditions requires significant metabolic energy, meaning animals without sufficient insulation must either generate more internal heat or risk dangerous temperature drops during extended time in cold water. Blue whales largely avoid this problem entirely through blubber alone, allowing more of their consumed energy to go toward growth, movement, and reproduction, rather than constant heat generation. Researchers studying feeding grounds found that blue whales specifically target cold, nutrient-rich waters where krill populations thrive, meaning this thermoregulation ability directly enables access to the exact food sources the species depends on most heavily. Without effective insulation, spending extended time in these colder feeding grounds would become far more physically costly, potentially limiting how much food a whale could realistically consume during peak feeding season. This connects blubber thickness directly to the extreme feeding capability discussed earlier, another example of how different physical traits work together rather than functioning as separate, unrelated advantages. Scientists studying blubber composition found it also plays a critical role during long-distance migration, serving as the primary energy source once whales reach warmer breeding waters containing significantly less available food. This means the same trait protecting whales from cold water temperatures also fuels months of travel and reproduction, happening in an entirely different environment. Researchers studying calf development found that newborn blue whales are born with comparatively less blubber than adults, requiring the intense, rapid feeding schedule discussed earlier specifically to build up sufficient insulation quickly. This creates yet another layer of vulnerability during those critical early months, adding to the list of reasons why maternal protection matters so heavily during this specific period of a calf's life. This detail reinforces a pattern appearing throughout nearly every part of this story. Almost every trait protecting adult blue whales exists in a weaker, less developed form in calves, explaining exactly why this narrow early life window remains the only meaningful point of vulnerability this species faces throughout its entire lifespan. Understanding blubber's full role reveals one more surprising behavior mothers rely on, one that pushes maternal protection beyond simple physical positioning into something far more deliberate. Blue whale mothers do not simply swim near their calves for comfort or companionship. Scientists studying mother-calf behavior found clear evidence of deliberate physical positioning, with mothers regularly placing their own massive body between a calf and any potential source of danger. Researchers describe this behavior as remarkably consistent across different documented encounters. When potential threats, including curious or aggressive orcas, approach a mother-calf pair, mothers frequently shift position to keep their body directly between the calf and the approaching animal, effectively using their own enormous size as a moving physical barrier. Scientists studying these encounters found that this positioning appears deliberate rather than accidental, with mothers actively adjusting their swimming direction and speed specifically in response to a threat's movement and approach angle. This detail suggests a level of protective awareness that goes beyond a simple instinct alone. Researchers studying whale behavior more broadly found similar protective positioning documented across several large whale species, suggesting this strategy represents a broader evolutionary pattern, rather than something unique only to blue whales specifically. Still, the effectiveness of this strategy scales directly with the mother's own size, meaning a full-grown blue whale mother provides an exceptionally large, effective barrier compared to smaller whale species attempting similar protective behavior. Scientists documenting specific attack attempts found cases where mothers appeared to physically block orcas from reaching a calf entirely, forcing attacking predators to abandon their approach or attempt to work around a barrier far too massive and powerful to push past directly. This detail highlights something important about how protection works within this species. It is not passive. Mothers actively engage with potential threats, using calculated positioning rather than simply relying on general proximity to keep calves safe during the most dangerous period of their lives. Researchers studying maternal energy expenditure found that this protective behavior comes with real physical cost, requiring mothers to remain constantly alert and ready to reposition quickly, even while managing their own significant energy needs during a period when they may already be relying heavily on stored fat reserves due to reduced feeding during active nursing months. This creates a demanding balancing act for mothers, managing their own survival needs, while simultaneously providing near constant physical protection for a calf still too small and vulnerable to defend itself effectively. Scientists studying long-term calf survival rates found a clear connection between strong maternal protective behavior and higher calf survival through the first year, reinforcing just how critical this specific behavior proves to be during the species' only real window of meaningful vulnerability. This detail adds a layer of complexity to everything discussed throughout this story. Size, skin thickness, tail strength, and sensory ability all matter significantly. But for a young calf still developing these advantages, active maternal protection becomes the single most important factor determining survival during those first critical months. Understanding this reveals something important about how this species survives as a whole, one that connects directly to a specific choice about how blue whales choose to travel through the ocean. Unlike many social ocean predators that hunt and travel in coordinated groups, blue whales spend most of their lives relatively solitary, often traveling and feeding alone or in very loosely associated pairs rather than tight, organized pods. Scientists studying blue whale social behavior found this solitary pattern differs significantly from species like orcas, which rely heavily on group coordination for both hunting and general protection. Researchers explain why this solitary lifestyle does not create the same vulnerability it might for a smaller, less protected species. For most animals, traveling alone increases risk significantly, removing the safety benefits that come from group vigilance and coordinated defense against predators. Blue whales largely bypass this problem entirely through individual size and strength alone, reducing the practical need for group-based protection that many other species depend on for survival. Scientists studying group behavior across different whale species found that smaller, more vulnerable species tend to show stronger social bonding and group travel patterns, while larger, less threatened species like blue whales show comparatively weaker social structures overall. This pattern reinforces a broader trend researchers have documented throughout the animal kingdom generally. Group living often develops specifically as a response to predation pressure, meaning species facing less pressure naturally tend toward more independent, solitary lifestyles over time. Researchers studying feeding efficiency also found practical reasons behind this solitary tendency. Blue whales require enormous quantities of food daily, and concentrated krill swarms often cannot support multiple large whales, feeding in the exact same location simultaneously without quickly depleting the available food source. This means travelling and feeding somewhat independently may actually improve individual feeding success, compared to competing directly with other blue whales for the same limited swarm. Scientists studying whale movement patterns found that blue whales do sometimes gather in larger numbers within particularly rich feeding grounds, suggesting this solitary tendency reflects practical efficiency rather than any strict biological requirement to avoid other whales entirely. Researchers studying mother-calf pairs found this represents one clear exception to typical solitary behaviour, with mothers maintaining extremely close contact with calves, specifically during the vulnerable early life period already discussed at length. This detail reinforces an important pattern appearing throughout this entire story. Social behaviour, group travel, and close physical protection all appear specifically during the one period when blue whales genuinely need it, then largely fade away once individual size and strength become sufficient protection on their own. Scientists studying this transition found it typically aligns closely with the same growth timeline discussed earlier, with young whales gradually spending more time independent from their mothers as their own size increases and predation risk continues dropping. This creates a clear, logical pattern once every piece of this story comes together. Protection scales precisely with need, appearing intensely during genuine vulnerability, then fading as size alone becomes sufficient. Understanding this reveals one final physical trait working quietly in the background this entire time, one hiding just beneath the surface of every single encounter already discussed. Beneath a blue whale's smooth, rippling surface lies skin far tougher than most people realise, measuring over an inch thick in certain areas of the body. Scientists studying blue whale skin composition found this thickness plays a direct critical role in surviving attempted attacks, functioning almost like a built-in layer of natural armour distributed across the entire body. Researchers explain exactly how this thickness helps during a physical confrontation. A bite capable of causing serious, potentially fatal damage to a smaller marine animal often results in comparatively minor surface wounds when applied to a full-grown blue whale's significantly thicker skin. This does not mean these attacks cause no damage at all, but the difference between a survivable wound and a fatal injury frequently comes down to this specific physical trait. Scientists studying rake scar patterns, the same marks discussed earlier as evidence of failed predator attacks, found that most documented scars remain relatively shallow, despite clearly showing forceful contact from orca teeth. This detail directly supports the idea that skin thickness plays a meaningful role in surviving these encounters, converting what could otherwise become serious, potentially fatal wounds into surface-level scarring instead. Researchers comparing skin thickness across different whale species found blue whales sit among the thickest-skinned marine mammals studied, likely connected directly to their overall massive size and the corresponding need for proportionally stronger physical protection. Scientists studying skin structure at a cellular level found dense layers of connective tissue contributing to this thickness, creating a surface that remains flexible enough for normal swimming movement while still providing significant resistance against external force or puncture. This combination of flexibility and toughness mirrors patterns already discussed regarding bone structure and rib flexibility, reinforcing a broader theme running throughout blue whale biology. Nearly every physical trait balances strength with flexibility, rather than relying on either extreme alone. Researchers studying injury recovery in blue whales found that even documented cases involving deeper wounds show relatively strong healing patterns over time, suggesting this species possesses effective natural healing processes working alongside its already thick protective skin. This detail adds another layer of resilience to a species already showing remarkable physical durability across nearly every category examined throughout this story. Scientists studying calf skin development found young whales possess notably thinner skin compared to adults, developing this thicker protective layer gradually throughout their early years of rapid growth. This detail connects directly to everything already established about calf vulnerability, adding physical skin thickness to the growing list of protective advantages calves have not yet fully developed during their most dangerous early months of life. Understanding this final piece completes a remarkably thorough picture. Size, skin, bones, blood, senses, sound, and behaviour all work together, layered across an entire lifetime, creating a species that becomes progressively more difficult to threaten with every passing month of growth. Yet even understanding every individual advantage discussed so far does not fully explain the final, most surprising element of this story, one connected directly to speed itself. Most people picture blue whales as slow, lumbering giants, moving gracefully but without any real burst of speed. Scientists studying actual swimming data found this assumption does not match reality at all. When necessary, blue whales can reach burst speeds exceeding 20 miles per hour, a pace that catches many researchers off guard given the animal's massive size. Researchers explain how this level of speed becomes possible despite the whale's enormous mass. Powerful tail muscles, already discussed in the context of defensive strikes, generate tremendous propulsive force with each movement, driving the whale's entire body forward with surprising efficiency given its size. Combined with the drag-reducing skin properties covered earlier, this creates a body genuinely capable of rapid acceleration when circumstances require it. Scientists studying swimming patterns found that blue whales typically cruise at much slower, more energy-efficient speeds during normal feeding or migration, reserving these burst speeds specifically for situations requiring rapid movement, whether escaping a potential threat or repositioning quickly during a feeding opportunity. This detail reveals an important survival strategy. Constantly swimming at maximum speed would burn through energy reserves far too quickly to sustain across a body this massive. Instead, blue whales conserve energy during normal activity, keeping this burst speed available as a reserve capability specifically for moments when it matters most. Researchers studying encounters between blue whales and potential threats found that sudden bursts of speed sometimes played a direct role in successfully avoiding continued pursuit, particularly in cases involving younger, still vulnerable whales attempting to escape a coordinated attack. This detail adds another layer to understanding calf survival specifically, suggesting that speed, alongside maternal protection and developing physical defenses, contributes meaningfully to surviving the riskiest period of a young whale's life. Scientists studying muscle composition found blue whales possess specific muscle fiber types, capable of generating rapid, powerful contractions needed for burst speed, distinct from the more efficient sustained muscle fibers used during typical slower swimming. This dual muscle system allows the whale to maintain energy-efficient movement most of the time, while still retaining genuine rapid response capability when circumstances demand it. Researchers comparing this to other large marine animals found relatively few species combine this level of size with this degree of burst speed capability, reinforcing just how unusual and specifically adapted blue whales are across nearly every physical category examined. This detail becomes especially significant when considered alongside everything already established throughout this story. A predator considering an attack must account not only for size, skin thickness, and tail strength, but also the very real possibility that this supposedly slow, massive animal could suddenly accelerate away entirely, ending the encounter before it ever escalates into genuine physical conflict. Understanding this final piece of the puzzle reveals something researchers find particularly fascinating about a much simpler, more visible signal blue whales send every single time they surface to breathe. Every time a blue whale surfaces to breathe, it produces something visible from remarkable distances. Scientists studying blue whale respiration found that the misty spray created during exhalation, often called a blow, can reach heights of over 30 feet and remain visible from as far as a mile away under clear conditions. Researchers explain exactly what creates this dramatic visual display. As the whale exhales forcefully through its blowhole after a deep dive, warm air from its lungs rushes out rapidly, meeting cooler surface air and condensing into a visible mist, similar in basic concept to seeing your own breath on a cold morning, just on a massive scale. This detail matters beyond simple visual spectacle. Scientists studying whale identification methods found that researchers can often identify specific whale species from a significant distance based purely on the size, shape, and angle of this blow, without needing to see the whale's actual body at all. This same visibility applies to any other animal or vessel within viewing range, meaning a blue whale's presence becomes obvious from considerable distances the moment it surfaces to breathe. Researchers studying predator behavior around surfacing whales found this visibility likely plays a role in maintaining the general avoidance behaviour already discussed throughout this story. A visible blow announces a whale's location clearly, potentially giving nearby predators additional confirmation of exactly what they might be considering approaching, well before getting close enough for a direct visual assessment of size. Scientists studying breathing patterns found that blue whales typically take several breaths in relatively quick succession after a deep dive, creating a brief series of visible blows before diving again for an extended period. This pattern connects directly to the dive physiology discussed earlier, representing the whale's process of rapidly restocking oxygen levels before returning to deeper water where feeding or travel continues. Researchers studying blow patterns across different situations found some variation depending on the whale's activity level, with faster, more frequent blows sometimes observed during periods of stress or exertion, compared to calmer, more relaxed breathing during normal feeding or resting behaviour. This detail offers researchers an additional tool for studying whale behaviour remotely, allowing some assessment of a whale's general condition or activity level without needing direct physical contact or invasive monitoring methods. Scientists studying historical whaling records found that this visible blow unfortunately also made blue whales easier to locate during the commercial whaling era discussed earlier, adding yet another layer to understanding exactly how this species went from nearly untouchable by natural predators to critically endangered within just a few decades of intense human hunting. This connects directly back to the central irony running throughout this entire story. Nearly every trait that made blue whales successful and protected throughout millions of years of natural evolution, including size, sound, and visibility, became liabilities the moment an entirely new kind of threat entered the picture. Understanding this pattern sets up one final powerful piece of this story, one explaining exactly why growth rate itself became perhaps the most underappreciated defensive advantage this species possesses. Throughout this entire story, one detail keeps appearing again and again in slightly different forms: growth rate. Scientists studying blue whale development found that this species grows faster than almost any other animal on Earth, relative to its final adult size, and this growth speed itself functions as a powerful, often overlooked defensive advantage. Researchers explain why raw growth speed matters so significantly. Every vulnerability discussed throughout this story connects directly back to size, specifically the size gap between a young calf and a full-grown adult. The faster a calf closes that gap, the faster every other advantage already covered — thick skin, powerful tail strikes, sheer mass — becomes fully available as genuine protection. Scientists studying growth rates across different whale species found blue whale calves gain weight and length significantly faster than comparable species during their first year of life, directly connected to the incredibly rich, calorie-dense milk discussed earlier in this story. This detail reveals an important evolutionary strategy. Rather than developing extensive group-based protection systems or complex social structures to protect vulnerable young over an extended period, blue whales instead evolved to minimize that vulnerable period itself as much as biologically possible. Researchers studying this strategy across the animal kingdom broadly found this approach appears specifically among species capable of reaching enormous adult sizes, where the size advantage itself becomes so significant that rushing toward it becomes more efficient than investing heavily in prolonged protective behavior. Scientists studying calf development timelines found that blue whales reach a size roughly matching their mother's length within just a few years, an extraordinarily fast maturation rate compared to many other large mammal species that can take a decade or longer to reach comparable adult proportions. This rapid timeline directly shortens the total window during which a young whale remains meaningfully vulnerable to predation, converting what could otherwise become years of ongoing risk into a comparatively brief, intense early period, followed by a rapidly closing window of danger. Researchers studying this pattern found it connects to nearly every other trait already discussed throughout this story. Rich milk enables rapid growth. Rapid growth shortens vulnerability. Shortened vulnerability reduces the total energy a mother needs to invest in active, ongoing protection. Every piece connects directly to every other piece, forming a complete, efficient survival system built around minimizing risk as quickly as biologically possible. Scientists studying reproductive strategy across large marine mammals found this approach differs meaningfully from smaller whale species, which often mature more slowly, but also face lower absolute size disadvantages relative to their own natural predators throughout that longer developmental period. This detail highlights something important about how evolution solves survival problems differently, depending on a species' specific biological circumstances. There is no single universal strategy. Blue whales developed a system perfectly suited to their unique biology: extreme size, extreme growth rate, and a narrow, intensely protected vulnerable window, working together as one complete solution. Understanding this reveals something researchers find genuinely remarkable about how every single piece of this story connects, setting up one final complete picture of exactly why this animal exists so far beyond the reach of nearly everything else in the ocean. Predators do not just evaluate current size when deciding whether to attempt an attack. Scientists studying predator decision-making found that animals often assess growth trajectory as well, essentially predicting how large and dangerous a potential target might become in the near future before committing significant energy toward an attack attempt. Researchers explain how this concept applies directly to young blue whales. A calf already born at a size larger than most adult animals on Earth, then gaining roughly 200 pounds daily, presents a rapidly shifting risk profile to any predator considering an attack. What might appear as a viable target during one specific week could become significantly more dangerous just days later as rapid growth continues. Scientists studying orca hunting behavior found evidence suggesting predators may factor in this rapid growth pattern, potentially explaining why serious committed attack attempts appear concentrated so heavily within the earliest possible window after birth, before growth rate begins closing the size gap too significantly. This detail adds a fascinating layer to understanding predator behavior around this species specifically. It is not simply a matter of evaluating a fixed, unchanging target. Predators effectively face a rapidly closing window of opportunity, one shrinking further with every single day that passes. Researchers studying successful predation attempts across multiple documented cases found a notable concentration during the earliest days and weeks following birth, supporting the idea that predators may instinctively recognize this narrowing opportunity and adjust their behavior accordingly. Scientists studying general predator-prey dynamics across different species found similar patterns elsewhere in nature, where predators show strong preference for attacking prey during specific developmental windows before certain protective traits fully develop. Blue whales represent an extreme, exaggerated version of this broader pattern, given how dramatically and rapidly their size changes during those critical early months compared to most other animals. This detail reinforces something already well established throughout this story from multiple different angles. Time itself functions as one of the most powerful protective forces available to a young blue whale, working alongside maternal protection, developing physical traits, and everything else already discussed at length. Researchers studying this dynamic found it creates an interesting evolutionary pressure, specifically favouring even faster early growth rates over successive generations, since any advantage in closing this vulnerable window more quickly directly improves survival odds. Scientists tracking long-term population data continue studying whether growth rates have shifted meaningfully over recorded history, though current data primarily confirms just how dramatically fast this process already occurs across the species as a whole. Understanding this reveals a complete layered defense system building directly from birth: extreme birth size, extreme growth rate, maternal protection scaled precisely to match risk level, developing physical traits activating progressively throughout early life. Every piece works together, converging toward the same outcome. One final sense remains to be explored, arguably the most important one, tying every previous chapter of this story together into a single, complete picture. Throughout this story, one ability keeps resurfacing in different forms, always connected to survival in some direct way: vibration detection. Scientists studying blue whale sensory biology found this specific ability may represent the single, most important defensive advantage this species possesses, tying together nearly everything already discussed about sound, communication, and early threat detection. Researchers explain why vibration detection matters so significantly compared to other senses. Underwater visibility remains limited even in the clearest ocean conditions, and sound alone, while useful, still requires some level of interpretation to understand what a specific noise actually means. Vibration detection offers something more immediate, a direct physical sense of movement and disturbance happening nearby, requiring no interpretation beyond basic awareness that something significant is happening close enough to matter. Scientists studying specialized sensory structures found evidence suggesting blue whales possess sensitivity to water pressure changes distributed across various points on their body, potentially allowing detection of nearby movement even without directly hearing or seeing a specific threat approaching. This detail connects directly back to the powerful low-frequency sound waves discussed earlier, suggesting blue whales may both produce and detect these same types of vibrations, creating a system that functions almost like a slow, wide-reaching form of underwater awareness, extending well beyond the range of normal eyesight. Researchers studying predator movement found that any animal swimming through water inevitably creates some level of detectable vibration and pressure change, meaning a sufficiently sensitive detection system could theoretically identify an approaching predator's general size, speed, and direction well before any direct visual or auditory confirmation becomes possible. This capability, if fully understood and confirmed through continued research, would help explain several patterns already discussed throughout this story. Changes in whale behavior occurring before visual confirmation of nearby predators becomes possible. Rapid, seemingly proactive positioning by protective mothers. General avoidance patterns that appear to activate earlier than expected based on sound or sight alone. Scientists studying this ability across different marine species found similar vibration sensitivity documented in various fish and marine mammals, though the specific range and sensitivity found in blue whales, given their massive size and correspondingly large surface area for potential vibration detection, remains an area of active ongoing research. Researchers continue working to fully map exactly how sensitive this system really is, and how significantly it contributes to overall survival compared to other senses already discussed throughout this story. What current evidence strongly suggests, however, reinforces everything already established. This is a species protected by layer after layer of overlapping advantages, each one reinforcing the others, creating a combined system far more effective than any single trait could achieve alone. Understanding this complete sensory picture sets up one final piece of this story, one focused specifically on how young whales navigate their most dangerous early years using everything discussed so far. Young blue whales do not simply wander randomly during their vulnerable early years. Scientists studying juvenile whale movement patterns found clear evidence that young whales tend to stay closer to specific deep water routes, areas offering both easier access to food and reduced exposure to the kind of coastal or shallow water conditions where certain predator encounters become more likely. Researchers explain the reasoning behind this pattern. Deep water generally offers more room to maneuver, more opportunity to dive quickly to escape a potential threat, and typically supports the same rich krill populations blue whales depend on for their intense early growth period. Shallow coastal areas, while sometimes used during specific migration or breeding phases, generally offer less room for the kind of evasive movement a young, still developing whale might need if a threat appears suddenly. Scientists studying migration route data found that these deep water corridors often align closely with established migration paths passed down and followed consistently across generations, suggesting young whales may benefit directly from following routes already proven successful by previous generations of their own population. This detail connects directly to earlier discussion regarding how blue whales navigate such enormous distances with apparent consistency year after year. Researchers studying predator distribution patterns found that orca populations, while capable of hunting across various ocean environments, sometimes show certain regional or seasonal patterns of their own, meaning specific deep water routes favoured by migrating blue whales may naturally see somewhat reduced predator activity during certain periods compared to other times or locations. This creates an additional layer of protection built directly into the geography and timing of a young whale's earliest independent movements, working alongside every other protective factor already discussed throughout this story. Scientists studying calf and juvenile behaviour found young whales generally remain closer to their mother during these early deep water journeys, gradually increasing independent movement and distance as they continue growing and developing throughout this critical period. This detail reinforces the gradual, scaled nature of protection already established earlier in this story, intense and constant during the earliest, most vulnerable days, then slowly relaxing as growth continues and genuine size-based protection becomes increasingly reliable on its own. Researchers studying long-term movement data across tagged individuals found that whales surviving through this early period successfully often continue favouring similar deep water routes well into adulthood, suggesting these early patterns may influence movement behaviour throughout an individual whale's entire life, not just during the specific vulnerable window discussed throughout this story. This detail adds a fascinating layer of continuity to the overall story, suggesting that decisions and patterns established during the most dangerous early days of life may echo forward across an entire multi-decade lifespan. Understanding this complete picture, from birth through early vulnerability through eventual near-total protection, sets up the final, most extreme piece of evidence available: a single dive record that demonstrates exactly how far beyond ordinary limits this species operates once fully grown. Among all the extreme physical abilities discussed throughout this story, one specific documented dive stands out as a clear demonstration of exactly how far blue whale capability extends beyond nearly every potential threat sharing the same ocean. Scientists using advanced tracking tags recorded a blue whale diving beyond 1,000 feet in depth during a single continuous dive, staying submerged for an extended period that pushed well past what most marine mammals, and certainly most potential predators, could realistically match or sustain. Researchers explain why this specific depth matters so significantly. Very few ocean predators regularly operate at these extreme depths, meaning a blue whale capable of diving this deep effectively gains access to an entire additional layer of the ocean completely inaccessible to many potential threats. This creates a genuine escape option, unavailable to most other prey species, a literal vertical dimension of safety built directly into the whale's own physical capability. Scientists studying orca diving ability found that while these predators are certainly capable divers themselves, sustained deep diving at this extreme level, combined with the specific oxygen management adaptations discussed earlier regarding blue whale physiology, gives blue whales a meaningful advantage in any scenario requiring genuine depth-based escape. Researchers studying this record dive found it aligned closely with active feeding behaviour, suggesting the whale was likely pursuing a particularly deep krill swarm, rather than specifically attempting to escape an immediate threat during this specific instance. Still, scientists studying the broader implications of this capability found that the same physical and physiological systems enabling this kind of extreme feeding dive would apply equally well during a genuine threat response, meaning this depth capability functions as both a feeding advantage and a potential safety mechanism simultaneously. This dual-purpose pattern appears repeatedly throughout nearly every trait discussed across this entire story, reinforcing a consistent theme running throughout blue whale biology as a whole. Very few adaptations serve only one single purpose. Most contribute to multiple different aspects of survival simultaneously, creating a remarkably efficient, interconnected system built through millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Scientists comparing this dive record to human diving technology found that even advanced scuba equipment cannot safely achieve comparable depth and duration without extensive specialized gear, while a blue whale accomplishes this using nothing beyond its own evolved biology. Researchers studying the full scope of blue whale physical capability, size, strength, speed, depth, sound, and sensory awareness describe this species as representing something close to a complete biological solution to nearly every possible ocean-based threat simultaneously. This record-setting dive represents just one final striking data point within an already overwhelming collection of evidence. Every single part of this story has pointed toward the same conclusion from a different angle, and this final piece of evidence sets up exactly why the blue whale survival strategy can be summarized in one simple, complete idea. Every part of this story has revealed a different piece of the same complete picture. A heart the size of a small car, a tongue heavier than an elephant, a voice louder than a jet engine, a tail capable of shattering a boat, skin thick enough to absorb a bite meant to kill, a dive deeper and longer than most advanced technology can safely match. Scientists studying blue whales as a complete biological system describe something remarkable emerging once every individual trait gets considered together rather than separately. This is not a species relying on one single overwhelming advantage. It is a species built from dozens of overlapping advantages, each one reinforcing the others, creating a combined survival strategy far more effective than any single trait could achieve alone. Researchers explain why this matters so significantly when considering overall survival across an entire species. A predator relying on speed alone might eventually encounter prey fast enough to escape it. A predator relying purely on size might eventually face something even larger. Blue whales avoid this entire problem by combining nearly every possible advantage simultaneously, creating a target so thoroughly protected across every conceivable category that no single natural predator strategy has ever proven consistently effective against a full-grown, healthy adult. Scientists studying this species across millions of years of evolutionary history found this layered strategy developed gradually, with each individual trait building upon previous adaptations, slowly constructing what eventually became the most completely protected large animal ever documented on Earth. This detail reveals something important about survival more broadly, extending well beyond blue whales specifically. Being difficult to defeat in one specific way often creates vulnerability somewhere else entirely. Being difficult to defeat in nearly every possible way simultaneously removes that vulnerability almost completely, creating a level of safety exceptionally rare anywhere in the natural world. Researchers studying the only real exception to this pattern, the brief, dangerous window during early calfhood, found this exception actually reinforces the overall pattern rather than contradicting it. Every single protective trait discussed throughout this story develops and strengthens specifically during this narrow early period, converging rapidly until a young whale reaches the same, essentially untouchable status enjoyed by every adult of its species. Scientists studying modern blue whale populations, still recovering from the one genuine historical threat capable of seriously endangering the species, found something important about the future outlook for this animal specifically. Every natural threat this species has ever faced throughout its evolutionary history has consistently failed to overcome the combined protective system discussed throughout this entire story. The only meaningful threat blue whales have ever faced came from somewhere completely outside natural predator-prey dynamics entirely. Researchers studying ongoing conservation efforts describe cautious optimism regarding this species' future, provided continued protection remains in place moving forward. This detail offers a fitting final thought for this entire story. A species this thoroughly protected, this completely built for survival across nearly every possible natural threat, ultimately depends now on protection of an entirely different kind, one requiring human decisions rather than evolutionary adaptation. Understanding everything discussed throughout this story reveals a species that spent millions of years becoming nearly impossible to threaten naturally, a living demonstration of exactly how far evolution can push a single strategy when given enough time, enough food, and enough ocean to work with completely.